We're back.
Back.
It's episode 78 of the Lyrical Ones podcast, brought to you by the good folks at Lyrical Opposition.
Hello.
And Affluent, how are you doing?
Wakanda forever.
Yeah, that's true.
That's how I'm feeling. Anytime I could remind myself, that Chadwick Boseman was here, and he was T'Challa. You remember T'Challa ain't got no last name. He was T'Challa. He was Jackie Robinson. He was Thurgood Marshall.
He was James Brown.
He was James Brown. It's just his birthday just passed. Happy belated birthday, heavenly birthday to to Chadwick. Most people don't call him Chad, but it was a valid nickname of his. And before Chadwick Boseman, we did not know what Chad was short for.
That's right.
We didn't know. I know I didn't know that Chad was short for something.
No, you're right. You're right. You actually right. Like that's a trip. Now, I mean, especially when you take into account internet culture and the connotation Chad has with people, but then to realize, like, yeah, like it's you just don't even realize, and for him to be this um, incredible talent that we were blessed with for a period of time to have been able to witness and experience, yeah, like I feel that. It's important. It's incredible. It's a trip because it almost like he came out of nowhere. Like even though you can kind of see the trajectory, especially with the movies you named, including some of the other ones that he was a part of. But when he became T'Challa, that plus him having his own movie, that really like that hit different. And so yeah, happy belated to Chadwick. It's such a crazy time.
Um, and also just get a little appreciation for Black Twitter because it's basically the greatest entity across the internet. And I can't wait for Black Twitter and Web3. Can't wait for Black Twitter to enter the metaverse. Um, Black Twitter is responsible for Buzz Lightyear having waves, for Vision having a do rag. Um, you know, Black Twitter openly accepts Piccolo, which is proper, which is canon, basically. And under Piccolo's do rag was also waves. If you check Black Twitter will tell you the truth about things. And so the the pairing of Chadwick Boseman and Black Twitter, we have been truly blessed, in this lifetime where those before us who passed on and those in front of us may never know how strong these two entities were for the culture. Um, I think about I think about the Migos and one of their kids' daughter's name is Culture,
Right.
and I hope she's a world leader one day. I just hope in my lifetime I get to see that come to fruition. Um, and if we run the tape back, 20 years down the line, remember that I said it here first. Um, I don't even know what his Offset last name is, but it don't matter because the culture, Jackson, Brown, Davis, what's his last name?
I'm gonna find out right now. And what's this is kind of rude that when you do it when you put Offset inside into Wikipedia,
Uh,
like he should just be number one. Like, but they got Offset, a song by Ti and Young Thug from Furious 7, original motion picture. But anyways, his last name is this Cephas?
yes, CC culture Cephas
Yeah,
or Cephas Cephas.
Kiari Kendrell Cephas.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean CC culture and
culture Cephas. All right, cool. That's all I needed to know.
President Cephas,
Future world leader.
President Culture.
Man, culture for
Yeah,
president.
culture president. Dang,
Culture for president.
culture for president. It's
I'm
yeah.
I'm cool with that. All right, cool. We lyrical ones. What's today? December
It
8th,
is December 8th,
2021.
2021.
We called it here. Um, yeah, so I'm in a great mood. Just appreciative of the salt and pepper in my beard, the the life that's been given to me. Waking up another day, uh, pineapple juice, you know, uh, sea moss, sour sop, watermelon. Not even watermelon. Dr. Sebi said it ain't saying good nothing about no watermelon, but raspberries, blueberries, blackberries. You know, what's that? Coconut oil, um, jojoba oil, apple cider vinegar. Alkaline water. It's a good life. I'm just in a place of gratitude, man. It's like the things that are nourishing me. Chadwick Boseman is acting, Black Twitter, and some solid produce from that originated from the Caribbean and Africa. That's and some moisturizers. Those are things that's nourishing my spirit right now. So I'm in a good place. Cindy, how you feeling today?
Let's take it back to Piccolo. First off,
You know it's canon.
I can't even talk about how I'm feeling when you talk about Piccolo being black. Um, as a kid, like
Tell them.
my mom always told me about Sambo, right? And the caricatures of black people and blackface and like she would always point those things out to me as a child, like that. What's that monkey everybody be having on their t-shirts? That what's that? I forget the name of that monkey that be everywhere, but he got like the red lips. I remember it was on Making a Band. Somebody tried to give that to Diddy, and Diddy was like, "What type of old racist coon stuff is this?" Like, it was like, "Don't be giving me no monkey with no red lips." And I remember, like, my mom always teach me about those things, and so I say all that, Mr. Popo. Don't forget about Mr. Popo, okay? Because he was there. He
He was
was
there.
there. Now Piccolo was consistent and present, and was is a great father figure. Um, but as a child, immediately I was like, he the black one. He the black one. Piccolo the black one. Even though when you look at the origin story of Goku and the Saiyans, makes a very compelling argument that they black too, and that's my belief too. Yeah, they might appear a certain way, but people be stingy with the ink, and this is a different time. So Piccolo, Saiyans, Mr. Popo, y'all get the gist. I just had to talk to a parent about how a lot of Japanese storytelling after World War II all has a play around the catastrophe of dropping these bombs on the country, which the stories become, especially around shonen, right? Like around the hero's journey, but even more the magnitude and the scale of spectacle and challenge. There's a lot of similarities to the black identity in America. I had made this one point around in those stories, when you see the immeasurable odds that the characters are up against, it's as though they could be taken out at any moment. That's always looming over their head. There's usually big buildups, especially in shonen, around that. And in my experience and what I've come to see and realize in others that are, you know, people of color, especially black, is that you have that same feeling of you could be taken out at any given time, right? And there's that sharing of the dynamic between learning who you are and understanding your true strength and powers and abilities, and that same similarity playing out with the main character in any number of anime or shonen manga or whatever. Um, but there's that those same like finding who you are, learning who you are, the hero's journey, the struggle of overcoming adversity and odds. And so I just had this conversation like a couple days ago. So it's timely that you bring up Black Twitter because I was looking at Black Twitter and I was just looking at garbage, and it was a reminder of being aware of your surroundings, being aware of the temperature, being aware
Mm.
of what's going on when we speak to the culture, right?
Reading the room.
Reading the room, right? Like I had another conversation about the legacy of Bipping, right? For those unfamiliar, we talking about Bay Area terms. The windows getting busted. If you coming out here, don't leave none in your car. Um, you gonna learn if you ain't gonna learn from here. But like someone had brought up spark plugs, and I was like, it just ignited this whole synapses in my mind of remembering what that was and how that was, and to now see all like more than a decade later, right? I could possibly say decades now, this evolution of this money making opportunity, regardless of its legal merit. It's a money making opportunity, especially when you're in adverse circumstance situations. And so, with Black Twitter, it's kind of like being aware of that same history in different capacities on different levels of what's going on in the culture, what's going on when it comes to the Chadwick Bosemans and the inspiration and the level of like joy you can have from seeing your own people, just someone who looks like you, express themselves in a way that's is world renowned and accepted by so many. And then on the other end, looking at garbage, hot trash drama and just being entertained by the absurdity of it, and also like realizing that like it's never too far away from anyone. And it for me, it gives me a level of humility. It gives me a level of humbleness, right? Like I understand that like yeah, the fragility of life, let alone the black experience and how crazy it can be, you can find it anywhere. And it is expressing that gratitude, expressing that thankfulness and appreciation every day to get up. Because this is an odd thing I was thinking of recently is that being 34 now, I'm at that age when I knew all of my relatives were adults. And yet when I look at myself in comparison to what I remember them, I'm like, how could this even be the same number? Because me, I feel great. I feel filled with
Oh,
life and
yeah, that's
ability
true.
and joy and just health. And when I remember them, I'm like, what world were we living in? Like they seem like they was, even in comparison to where I'm at, still decades beyond in terms of the level of age. I'm not talking about like there's a big difference between getting old and aging, right? And
That's called living through the crack epidemic and living through you know the flower power age, right? It's like
I mean,
it's
someone
just
was coming from the remnants of the civil rights movement and era into the summer of love and like
Vietnam, right? So like if you're 30 in the 90s, right? So basically you was, born around 65 or something like that. So at that age, right, you didn't seen some things,
seeing some
right?
things.
like as a child, maybe you saw, you know, a cultural leader get assassinated,
A
right?
few.
Right, as an adult, right, you were old enough to decide whether you would riot in LA or not. Um, as a school age person, you were were cautious and fully aware that your 18th birthday might lead you to being drafted. Depending on depending on where you were, in the age range. But safe to say, to some degree, they were downtrodden. Um, and the access to drugs, you know, didn't change necessarily. It's more like the culture around the drugs changed, and kids came into the picture. The computers came into the picture. Video games came into the picture. Chuck E. Cheese came into the picture, right? So many, 19, 78, 79, Star Wars comes into the picture. Sci-fi is now on a screen, on a large screen in a movie theater, and the amount of things that they went through, right? It's like basically the people who were in the gyms and exercising and working out, in the 90s, if they weren't doing steroids, they're still working out. If they were doing steroids, they might still be working out, but not doing steroids no more. But those folks, are around in their right in their 50s and 60s and 70s, and yeah, like the I think the priorities are different, right? The priorities of the era are something that's different. Before we get too far into inspiration, let's go back to the activity of bipping. Um, the activity of bipping is executed and practiced by a subgenre of people called bippers, and they are called bippers because their money making opportunity of choice is bipping or to bip. They choose to bip on on an occasional, sometimes regular, sometimes routine basis. Now, Cynthia, let me ask you: have you ever found a spark plug in your car after the window has been shattered?
See, that's the thing. Like I was really cool off cars for a hot minute. So I never had the opportunity to have one be found in my car. I found them around my car. Definitely done seen them around me. But
That's
no,
that's a,
I
that,
mean,
that's a wonderful experience when you talk about humility and you talk about humbleness and you talking about gratitude. Right? Really, right? Bippers, right, are like earthworms. They are part of this fertilization of humility within the metropolitan area of the San Francisco Bay Area. And bippers do what bippers do. They bip. And just to clarify for everyone who's for the layman's term, right, of uh breaking and entering of a vehicle, um, right, robbery, theft. theft, not robbery. Most of the time, it's theft, right? It's breaking windows uh, through whatever means is possible, and pilfering, stealing, content. Sometimes it's stealing. Sometimes nothing is taken, which is frustrating in its own right.
Hey, sometimes you got to practice.
Because
Sometimes it's just practice.
sometimes it's practice. Sometimes is you just need to make sure you got the right uh, window, a glass repair company.
Sometimes they ain't
Sometimes
even a bipper, but they do the bipping. Like I remember people who would out of frustration do it, out of anger do it, would do it as a means of expression.
yeah. Well, that's the thing about San Francisco Bay Area is it is like yoga. Some people some people use it out of necessity. Some people are practicing, out of peer pressure. Some people are practicing because they don't know what else to do. But it's not much difference. There's a lot of yoga studios and there's a lot of broken windows. People's bipping in parking lots and carports on the street and alleys, uh, in front of your kids' daycare. Outside the schoolhouse,
Right
and
outside your house, depending on
right
where you
outside
at.
right outside of your house, around the corner from your block. I knew that I learned that I could not park off my block because then the bippers would find me. For whatever reason,
It's
I
not
was
even like
fine.
the bippers would find you; they would just see you. Like you know what I'm saying? Like it was like you like you ever it's like Metal Gear Solid, right? Like the soldier has a cone view, right? Can only
What?
sees in the cone, right? And if you are in their pathway, they got you. They see you. That's it, right? If you're not in the cone, they can't see you. You're not on the radar, right? It's like
And
you
so
just parked in their radar, even though it's
and so
on.
that and so I had to learn how to park outside of the radar of the bippers. Um,
Navigation.
that's right. Um, Currently, there's a video going around of of a driver in his car, and his car is taped up with bags on all four windows. And as he gets into his car, he takes the plastic bags off and proceeds to roll up his windows as he drives off. So normally, when you got plastic bags on a car
You already got
with the
got.
you already got, and
You already got,
but
he
he
got
knew
them.
he knew that he was in the sight of the bippers.
So he got in a cardboard box.
So he right he pulled a big boss snake move on him and hid in plain sight basically
Just
by
hop in a cardboard box. Like they ain't gonna look here.
taping up his windows ahead of time. He he
It's like
he
I can't get the visual out of my head now. I just see a bunch of dudes walking by with a question mark above their head, like, huh? What's that? And just keep on going. Like, oh man.
is it is the best.
SUV, tinted windows. Ran. Everybody.
Yeah.
Do. They did a beeline. Pop, look inside, just snatch. Now this man said, look, my car windows have bags. And when I leave, I got windows and no bags. Like,
Yeah. It
props
was,
to you because you was creative. You get points for navigation. You get points for creativity and execution. You got caught though because now they see the video. Everybody gonna be like, "I'm on that car next time I see it." So it is one of those things where just gotta be careful. It's I say it with a smile because pain for me. Sometimes you gotta smile through the pain. Sometimes you gotta smile through the pain. It's tough. I done had my window bit before. I know people still getting their windows bipped. It's not nice. It's not fun. No one likes it, but it is a part of it is a part of this era that we are in. It is a way that people are making money. It is a viable option for them. It's not to say that it's sustainable. It's not sustainable. I've seen how many people like this is the thing, right? Is that I see how it stops being a thing of survival and it starts becoming like an addiction. It becomes like a game of tag
Right.
where I'm up so high that like the times I get caught like are minor in comparison to the times I didn't get caught.
It's
And that
gambling.
rush of getting away with it becomes such a thrill that it's like I gotta feed the endorphins. I gotta feed, not to mention if there's sometimes an overlap, intersectionality of choices, right? Where a person goes from, okay, I'm surviving through this means of bipping to then I'm also taking in substances that help me like deal with and manage other ailments that I have. And sometimes it's not prescribed, right? It's not a lot of times it's not prescribed. It's self-soothing, self-diagnosed, self-prescribed. And then it becomes this thing where you have to feed one addiction with another addiction where it's like, oh, I gotta stay up. And in order for me to stay up means I gotta keep doing this. But I've also seen what happens when a person gets caught and you fit the description and they hit you with all these cases.
Mm.
And it's it's really tough right now because we do see in the Bay Area the extreme gap between have and have not, right? There's people who have an exorbitant amount of wealth. You could drive down any street and you start to see the difference in cars. We're talking about the difference between seeing like 10-year-old Hondas between seeing the latest model Range Rover and Tesla and Porsche truck, and it's just a huge gap. The wealth divide, right? Is we're easy to point out, as I mentioned before, right? The people that'll rob a Walgreens, but we won't talk about Walgreens as a company stealing from their employees, right? We'll talk about how that people are taking hundreds of thousands of dollars of stuff, but no one points the finger, no one sounds the alarm, no one brings up the CEOs and the leadership and management teams who are involved in pretty much taking away wages from people illegally, right? This isn't allegedly, this isn't something that's like we're just making up. Like you could go see a report. There's only like one out there talking about wage theft, but wage theft happens a lot more and is so much more money taken away from the everyday worker, right? So imagine the dynamic of a person who is the uncle or the father or the mother or the auntie of someone who works at like imagine that, oh, my auntie works at Walgreens and she just got she settled out of court for a little bit of money because she saw the check and didn't have the means to continue fighting, right? Let's be very clear. A lot of times when people settle out of court it's because they realize they don't have the means to keep fighting. What do I
Right.
when I say the means, they don't have the money. You're going up
Right.
a corporate entity. A corporate entity usually has unlimited funds for their legal defense, they team to just scrutinize and berate you, right? To
Yeah.
to put you through so much more turmoil, right? The amount of time and energy you got to devote to a case, right? I've seen it on both ends. I've seen people who fought and barely won, and I've seen people who fought and they think they won. And then I've seen people who are like, I ain't fighting. Right. Notice I ain't saying nobody won. Right. Those are usually like the lotto to me. Like you see it like a news report, like so and so got $10 million from the police department. But we don't hear that about Walgreens. We don't hear that about Best Buy. We don't hear that about these big companies that we all participate in. And it's like, oh, let me be concerned because there's people, right? Again, let's go back. Oh, my auntie worked at Walgreens. Now she can't work there because she accepted this out of court deal, right? Where they settled.
Mm.
And now she don't have a job, but she got a little bit of money. And because maybe she doesn't have access to education or a means to leverage that money, I'm gonna see that and I'm be like, it ain't gonna happen to me. So what I'm gonna do? Oh well, I know I got some people that I can run with where we could come up real quick, and it ain't gonna be nobody taking from me because I'm gonna be taking from them, right? And it's hard for people to extend that compassion and that grace to consider the complexity, the layers of intertangledness, the intertwinedness, how one may relate to the other. I'm not saying it's always a guarantee, but I do see that there is, no person is separate or an island, and we all interconnected to some degree. And I can recall so many people being like, why would I work doing this when I can make so much more doing that? Right now, of course, we could do the long math, right? We could say, oh, well, when you sit down for a couple of years, you're not making no money. But if your brain ain't fully developed, you ain't even thinking about tomorrow. You're just thinking about right now. So, it's to highlight and get people to think critically around all these different intersecting parts where it's like, yeah, we see a window broken, but how much more do you see, right? Because, broken
Right.
window theory, right? Oh, the cost of a house can be dropped dramatically because the neighbor's window's broken. And then, well, what's going to happen? We're going to get rid of all you people of color and we're going to sell it to the highest bidder, whoever that so happens to be. But 9 times out of 10 in this country, we know what that means, right? It's just statistics, it's data. And, I hope this gets people to think critically about like what they see every day, because I've often heard like I've seen somebody was like, oh, they how could they go up in the? It's not like they hurting for money running up in Walgreens. They got on Jordans, and I'm like, yeah, you see the thing about that, right? Like what it means to feel validated and seen, what it
Right.
means to feel like you have a sense of pride when $200 is small in comparison, right? Was like I paid $200 one time for something that may last me for a couple months. Now you can say what you want, but if you weren't raised to understand, right, the dynamic and the relationship of what you covet or what you appreciate or what you have pride or joy in, right? What you realize these people are raised, they're taught, there are lessons that are learned.
Conditioned.
Yeah, conditioned, right? Conditioning, right? This is what you're conditioned to do. You're experiencing these routines and these practices, and it's when you have some type of intervention, right? Like people consider intervention to be like, oh, you on drugs or you drinking, so we're gonna have intervention. No, intervention just means to intervene in the routine, intervene in the practice, intervene in the condition, right? I'm going to interrupt in a way with intention to say, I'm gonna introduce something different. I'm gonna show you something different. And in this instance, I don't see enough intervention. I don't see enough intentionality. I don't see enough grace and compassion. I see people quick to judge and say, well, I made it. And it's like, yeah, but how did you make it, right? What supports did you have?
Right.
And don't discount what you had, right? Because that person does not have what you have, right? Your mother's your mother. And I think that's the thing that people often forget is like not everyone's afforded the same opportunities. Even if your situation was dire, when you start to break it down and look at the details, you realize it is night and day in a lot of instances. And that compassion and grace will give you the time to understand the compassion. Because as much as I say it, I've done it, right? I've had to sit in front of people who have committed harm to their community. And then I've had to figure out how do we repair that harm? How do we restore that? So that way they don't continue to commit harm, right? But if I'm going to be judgmental and divisive in my, I can tell you I've been hurt without having to hurt you, right? I don't have to hurt you to let you know I've been hurt. And
Right.
I think oftentimes people take their hurt and they hurt others with it instead of communicating that they're hurt and then learning and figuring out a way to prevent continued hurt to prosper, right? How do we stop that? How do we prevent that? How do we change that? So
Yeah.
we're speaking out of compassion and understanding and not out of disgust and just infamy, right? And so I think that, yeah, like Bipping go a long way. I was about to try and see if I had my knife, hint him, hint, but it's one of those things where it can't really get it right now. But it is a thing where like you don't even like. I remember I want to be safe, right? So let me have this tool in case something was to happen that could help me in a very dire situation. But the same thing, right, that could be used to save a life can also be the same thing to get some time taken away from my life. So it's just one of those things to really like understand the degrees of not even separation of relation, right? I'm related to Kevin Bacon. We all related to Kevin Bacon. So yeah.
So it's interesting because if you think of a lot of times when people talk about diversity and talk about different cultures coming to thrive in an area or survive in an area, and they call it a melting pot. Um, I think what doesn't get talked about a lot in the melting pot is the temperature, um, and how likely you are to come across someone who's agitated, um, just because of the proximity of everyone else. Um, because there's so much interconnectedness that may not be desirable, that one would become agitated by the amount of varying perspectives and lived experiences that shape interactions that create conflict. Cuddy the Rock, right?
Hey,
Hey, like it's like you from the Bay when you just say something excited about something, say hey, hey, whatever it is, and you know when you talk about a melting pot, right? Things melting together, right? It means that the atoms are going at a fast pace and they're regularly bumping into each other. Um, just like if you boiling something, right? It's already liquid. When you melting something, it's changing its state. And if you're melding cultures together, right, then to be a new thing, whether it's Bipping or critical race theory or the Black Panthers or flower power or the summer of love or um, altcoins and cryptocurrency, like whatever it is, right? When you talk about it being a melting pot, you got all these different lived experiences, but also everything is kind of crashing into each other to make something new. And they are people are people are living a life where their perspective and their worldview is steadily being changed and broken down with every interaction with somebody new or different. And you're more likely to come across someone different who's experiencing something new on a regular basis just by being outside. And the thing about gentrification, right, is that sometimes you introducing new things, but sometimes you're introducing a wave of the same thing. And people don't realize that the wave of the same thing is not melting, it's pushing. Um, it's basically filling up the pot and letting what was there already get pushed out of the pot. And that's the premise behind Last Black Man in San Francisco, where the population demographics have changed so much over time that the scope of the culture in the area has changed. And like there's got to be a level of compassion that comes along with the wave of the things that are the same, because I see generations of students in high schools here not being prepared to work down the street from them, not being prepared to work downtown in the city that they live in, not being ready to work around the corner, you know, from the establishments that they older siblings, cousins, parents are going to for happy hour and dinner and things like that. Um, it's trippy to me because yeah, last week we talked about um, this space being bought up in the metaverse, um, but and companies still buying buildings, they still leasing buildings, And come January, some places already companies gonna be moving, asking their employees to come back, into the office. And the employees that they're asking to the office, right, are not locals. They may live there, but then they didn't grow up there. And I know because I talk to some of the people that I work with and interact with, and I'm one of the only natives they know of. And I'm like, how I in my head I'm thinking, how is that possible? But that's the lived experience, right? That they navigating with, right? Yes, like I know all my family and friends, and that they still here and they still making it work. But also, yeah, I know some people that moved away and found somewhere that works for them. And some people moved away, right, because of the melting, right? Some people
The
moved away because
melting,
some people
because of
moved
the
away
melting.
some people moved away because of the melting. Some people moved away
It was the
because of the
melting.
the way, right?
Look,
Of
they
the
kicked
the
me out.
wave.
I came back. Okay, they kicked me out. I came back with a vengeance. That's like
Yeah,
it's like the first bubble. I remember it was called the bubble back then. Now I've got a new phrase. It's called the mountain range. It's the mountain range because right now it ain't no like people be like, oh, it's gonna burst. It's gonna burst. Look, we've been waiting for the burst. Ain't no bursting. Okay, this is what they do. It go up and they go down. It go back up. It go down. It go back up. It go down. It go back up. It's a mountain range. Okay. I'm not gonna fall for this bubble theory again. The first bubble when it was AOL.com, yeah, okay. That time period, yeah, there was a bubble, and I remember having to move, and I remember in my mind, I'm gonna find my way back. My family didn't
2008.
make it back.
2008 was legit bubble.
Okay, 2000, but that was housing, right? That was the other that was the because if you think about it, Facebook wasn't hurting, Google wasn't hurting, right? They were still making their moves. The ones who were hurting were your average everyday people, right? There were people who knew what's up, and there's people who had a cushion to escape the harm of the 2008 2009 financial crisis that impacted the world, right? Those were people who manipulated and gouged the market, right, to set people up for failure,
Right.
right? But when you talk about right when you have that Spider-Man that the Spider-Man meme when you two Spider-Mans meet and you only get to do that when you in the mirror you be like, oh wait, that's me, right? Because when you at work you surrounded by Green Goblin and Doc
Dang,
Ock and Craven and Sandman and Mysterio and right
real sinister.
and Sinister 60,000. But it's I'm saying it all to say, right? There's people who are fighting to make a way, and you have to really like, as I continue to say, because it is a practice, right? As we breathe, when you're mindful of your breathing gets better. So I'm saying this as a repetitive notion, either to be challenged or to grow within it. I'm not looking for nobody to die for change. I'm not looking to put people in harm's way to do something different. I am
Yeah.
looking to take what is in front of us and use that as a tool to enhance our lives and the existence that we have and we share. Right? I'm looking to do that for everyone. More importantly, for the ones who have been harmed and continue to be in harm's way, right? And when I'm saying it, I'm talking about getting money. I'm talking about building empires. I'm talking about circulating my wealth or my financial means within my own community, right? I try and support local businesses. I try to support up and coming artists. I try and support other people that I know the money is going to be within the circle. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to be within the circle because people, they have eyes that wander to outside the circle. And I can't be mad at that, right? But as I do that, I refine who's going to stay within the circle, right? Because I'm of the belief that, you know, um, I don't need, I like, this may be controversial to say,
Hmm.
I don't need someone who don't like me. I have no want for someone who don't like me. If there's ever a reason someone don't like me, does not appreciate me, hates me, I don't need them. And
Real
I'm
talk.
gonna focus on and I'm gonna lean in on the ones who appreciate me, who like me, who care about me, who there for me, because I appreciate a person who could tell me the truth that they don't like me, even if they don't have a reason, even if it's just something as shallow as the color of my skin, right? You don't like me because I look black or I look Latin or I look whatever. You don't like me. Cool. Thank you for sharing. I could go and do my thing elsewhere. Um,
Real talk.
it's such a odd thing to say at this time, but I have a choice at any interval to react and respond, right? If I come at it compassion and grace, that's one way of dealing with it. If I come at it with anger and hate, that's another way of dealing with it. But like I said, I'm not trying to put nobody in harm's way. I've lost enough people, and I value the lives of the ones who are around right now. So I can never put nobody in that position or the circumstance to be a sacrificial lamb for any cause. My cause is to enhance and create sustainability, to repair the harm, and to learn from what has been done, to teach others what compassion and love looks like, how to love themselves, how to extend that to others. Because I do think that's a big difference than the adversarial, divisive nature that we've been exposed to and we've become accustomed to. I don't think there's anything wrong with having adversaries and having, challenging thoughts and seeing things differently. But I do see that, like right now,
Right.
I'm going for something different, and that's hard for people. Different is really hard, and I totally empathize because I struggled for so long. It was such a struggle to even think about wearing a mask with gold teeth. I'm doing it though, right? I lean into the things that make me uncomfortable. I lean into the stretch, right, where it's like, oh, I know this is uncomfortable, but it feels better as I go deeper into it, right? The further I go into it, the more I'm gaining access and flexibility and a means for functionality, and
Right.
that's how I perceive life now. I don't claim to be anything other than a person that is learning how to undo all of the harm. And for those that know, the shackles and chains that have been placed upon us, whether it's mentally or physically, I'm looking to break barriers. And I think that, yeah, like looking at all these elements of culture, especially from the Bay Area's perspective, right? Like you could take it back to the 60s, you could take it to Great Migration when, there was no one here, right? There was land, right? It's hard to even imagine now, right? Most things is redeveloped,
Right.
repurposed. But back then it was still land. There was still opportunity to grow. And looking at the messaging of especially the ones who come before me that have shown that, yeah, this city hasn't been as liberal, forward thinking, and progressive, hasn't always been the most kind and the
It
most
ain't.
thoughtful.
It it's never been the most.
Oh, well, they portray an image that sells well and makes it one of the most, for a long time, right? It's one of the most
It's
expensive places in the world, but also one
known
of the most
for
frequently
right.
visited.
Pop known for popularized for not actually.
There you go, right? Not actually, right? But it goes back to what you were saying, right? Knowing that when I think of the rarity of people who are prepared to work within this community and
Mm,
thrive versus the numerous amount of people I know who weren't even given an opportunity to give a chance to them being able to be a part of it, right? Who are on the outside of it, who are looking at the crystal towers, knowing that they won't be invited in.
right.
Um, for me, it's like, okay, I'm showing up in my community right now. And this way, I've learned a lot around like, you know, understanding if I have money, I have access to freedom. I have access to opportunity. I have access to resources. And that my relationship to money is shaped by the people around me. And as I become more aware of myself, I have to challenge those notions that were given to me if I'm ever going to really change things, because we can keep saying, oh, the common denominator is, but until we have access to the common denominator, we just going to be talking about it,
Right.
right? Like I'm all for healing, I'm all for therapy and thriving, but we need more therapists of color, right? If we
True.
have people of color who can't access adequate education or have an adequate means to participate in the practice of education, how are we going to have more therapists, right? If we keep saying that schools need money, when do we shift the focus of saying, okay, if my parents sacrificed and struggled to put forth food on the table for me, why can't I do the same thing now based off of the foundation they've given me to go and even multiply what that means? To extend that, to sacrifice even more for my legacy, for my heritage, to provide an even more substantial opportunity to not get brought down because I be if I see another person who looks like me or a relative of mine receive a very luxurious gift, knowing that I could leverage that to
Hmm.
give access to so many more people. I can't look to them and be like, why didn't they? Right. I just know that there's a possibility when I see them. And every time I see that, every time I see somebody pull up and they got the $300,000 chain or the Rolls Royce, no matter what the illusion is, it lets me know there's a possibility. There's a possibility that I could take that same financial footprint and I could do something with it. I'm not even looking at them as though they need to do something. I'm just looking at
No,
them as a source of inspiration to keep going, right?
yeah, that's all it ever is, right? It's like I'm not learning I'm not learning a lesson. I'm learning my own lesson by watching them. And I don't never need to say I wish I was.
Because I
I
know
wish
I
I
can.
every time. And as soon as I have the thought of I wish then I'm at that moment I'm capable. As soon as that desire comes in, right? Then I'm capable because then I have what is a potential goal. And I can just work backwards from there and say, okay, well, how do I get myself in that situation? Right? Well, right, where, how was it received? Right? And is there an opportunity to gather the goal another way, right? Come across the goal another way, right? It's like the route to the peak of the mountain. And it may not be a peak, it may just be the end of Dragon Road, right? It's like, and you pick the pace that you go at, knowing that when you get to the end, right, then you can help your friends the way they need to be helped. You can help your family the way they need to be helped. But the road is yours to travel alone. Can't nobody take you along the road. The ain't no cheat code, ain't no
And
cloud go
there
take you
might be people
down.
along the way who could support you along the road, but you got to start on the road. You got to get
Yeah,
on the road.
yeah. You won't come across them if you're not traveling on the road. And if you don't perceive that there's a road to go down, then you won't necessarily travel along that road. Um, but sometimes, if you're in your travels, right, in your pursuit of things, right, you will come across opportunities, and they may align or they may distract you from where you were headed in the first place. And got to be mindful of that. I know I have to be mindful of that, in anything. But I do know that even if I come across another opportunity, I have to look at that end result and say, am I taking this opportunity for the goal that I have, or am I now is this now a side quest and there's something that I need along the way, because I don't want to release or let go of my goal in lieu of this side quest, because the side quest is just that. It's something on the side, and it's great, but sometimes we spend too much energy on the side quest, and and
We
it
forget that we forget where we headed.
yeah, like, oh no, I used to got a whole full main quest to look after.
I did that.
And
I did that a couple times. I'm actually ending my side quest right now.
that's right. And that
Ended the
and
side quest. I'm actually double dipping. I'm like, okay, can I do the side quest and the main quest at the same time? Because I was doing the side quest for a minute.
and and that's part of, right, understanding, right, especially in a season, right, or a year where you have these phases of the year where you say, okay, well, I completed some mini quests and some side quests this year, and I can now move back. What I learned in those side quests and those mini quests, what I acquired now will help me on my goal that I set at the beginning of the year. Um, but if I don't set those goals, maybe even month by month, right, it's easy to get distracted, right? So 1 month, right, I set a goal to iron out some finances, to be more intentional in my communication, to to be more practical in my planning. Oh, look, there go the light bulbs I was looking for. Um, right, a lot of what happens is right here in this, in my vicinity. Um, but
But that it's a level
they,
of
but
mindfulness, right?
yeah,
It's a
but
level of
I
intention.
said the intention, but then I didn't complete everything, week by week. But I did say this week I'm gonna work on this. This week I'm gonna work on this. So I didn't, right? So then I talked to an accountant, 1 week, and got some advice from an accountant on, what paperwork I needed, what things I need to know, how was I gonna move forward, and you know, what did I need on my end, right, to help them do what I needed them to do for me. Um, and then the next week, I said, well, in week two, I'm gonna work on, my communication and being a better listener, or being more transparent, or being more honest, um, about, the things that, were challenging to me. Um, then the next week I was working on something else. And right then my month was wrapped up. And then when the month is wrapped up, I can look back and say, okay, well, I didn't get as far as I wanted to with this, so maybe this can roll over to the next month. Um, or say, well, I got this knocked out, but I want to make it something that, is a reoccurring thing, in my intentionality. So now that I acquired the skill, now I'll level up the skill. And a lot of times folks don't want to level up the skill. But sometimes, right, like getting better at something that you have, attempted won't will yield results once you have gone so far. Um, it may not yield results in the beginning, but there's a quote. I think it's Arnold Schwarzenegger says, uh, "One day of rest, right, won't make you weaker. Right, the same way one day of working out won't make you stronger. Right, it's a cumulative thing. Okay, we need lozenge or something. Cumulative thing. Cumulative. There it is. I don't know.
You gotta
Uh,
work it out. You know what I'm saying? You gotta work
Eng-
it out.
Eng-
This ain't even
English,
our language anyway, so you know what I'm saying? People forget that.
but but
Look,
swag
look.
is
I'm gonna say
but
something real quick.
swag is
You
our
talk.
language.
You want to talk about Black Twitter? This was a trip. This was on Black Twitter. There was like a slight study done, right? Someone asked the kids, right? It was a picture. You got
This is definitely for
Elmo.
back
You
Twitter.
got you got
Slight a
Elmo. You
slight
got
study.
you got Elmo eating cookies, right? And you got Cookie Monster in bed sick, right? Right. You got Elmo's next to the bed eating cookies, and Cookie Monster is in the bed sick. Someone asked the students, right? They asked the white kids. They said, "Who be eating cookies?" And the white kids said, "Elmo," right? When they asked the black kids, they said, "Who be eating cookies?" They said, "Cookie Monster." Now, when they asked that same question and they said, "Who is eating cookies?" Right? The white kid said the same thing, but the black kid said, "Elmo." Right? Who be eating cookies? Cookie Monster. Who is eating cookies? Elmo. We
Well,
all know who be eating cookies.
they
Cookie
different
Monster.
questions. They're different
They
questions.
different questions, right? And they said that same difference in dialect when it comes to verbs and subjects and nouns. When you pose those questions in different dialects in Africa, especially in Nigeria and Western Africa, Northern Africa, they still pick up on that same subtle difference, right? When you say who be, when you know that's who they are and it's a part of their identity versus who is in the moment, right? So when you say cumulative and it's like the word ain't coming to me, you write the word ain't coming to you. It wasn't our words. We just made the most of it, right? Because when you think about wait, we got the one and only Diz. What would you feel are some setbacks for setting goals? Yourself, the
Nah, but
world,
like
time. Like we
they
could go on. Like
setbacks are literally right what you allow them to be.
true, how you receive them. Oh wait, we got the one and only saying. Many people fail to acknowledge the small steps and consider those small things as progress, but overlook the power of baby steps. In my opinion, you're right.
Ooh,
You are right because look at this. Right when we think of, oh wait, the one and only said again, don't want to level up the skill or value the newly acquired skill, right? Or value the newly acquired skill, right? Words are everything. It's not what you say, it's how you say it
oh yeah,
for real, right?
everything coming in right now. Okay, for sure.
So we got it. We got, the one and only Diz coming through tough right now on
Is
Facebook and keeping it real. And it's true, right? When you think about setbacks, it's your perception. Your perception is reality, right? Like the electrical neurons of how I perceive everything that's going on. I can perceive someone as a threat. I can sit up there and see someone as peaceful. I can see so much based off of what my electric synapses are telling me. I have a choice on how I choose to respond, right? A failure to respond is one thing, but I still got a choice on how to respond. Even within my failure to respond is a choice. It's practice, it's refinement. Now, when it comes to setbacks, right? You could set a goal and things will happen, but will you perceive the setback as a lesson on what to do to refine going towards your goal, or will you see it as something that will derail you from your purpose, right? Because to me, I've learned the one and only coming through again for real, not free. Laugh out loud. It's true, right? How you say where it's not free, right? There's a cost, there's a tax on everything. Your emotional expenditure, your energy, whatever your contributions are. But just breaking down what you were saying, right? Many people do fail to acknowledge the small steps, right? We want to often, like, people will discount me all the time and now realize how many other people I've had been able to support in so many different ways. But because I've always chosen the path of humility, hence the mask, right? This ain't about my face or my ego. When the mask off, you should not know who I am, right? This is not intertwined. When I rap and I do what I do to perform, it's more about the music and you than it is about me, right? I'm not here to gloat in my existence. I'm here to maintain a boundary, right? So when you talk about acknowledging the small steps, right, people oftentimes will discount things that I do or what others say because of how close proximity you are, right? And it's easy to do that with yourself because if you're doing it to someone else, 9 times out of 10, you'll do it to yourself. So it's hard to accept the small things because maybe in your mind you've romanticized the idea of something being large, right? People often ask me, "Oh, how are you so healthy?" Discipline, doing the right thing when I don't feel like doing it. There are days when I do not want to eat vegetables. I'm going to eat vegetables, right? My discipline outweighs my motivation. My discipline outweighs my feelings and emotion. Me brushing my teeth ain't got nothing to do with how happy or sad I am that day. Me wiping my behind ain't got nothing to do with how angry I am. I'm going to do what's going to get done. When I start applying that, I get results, right? Things happen when I take that same level of discipline, right? I notice, oh, at nighttime, I'm not really sleeping. So maybe my habits from my mother growing up was I'm gonna watch TV to pass out. You know what? Now what I do, I'm gonna go work on something. I'm gonna go work on a song. Like you talking about me with an accountant, right? I met with my tax guy. I need to go create an itemized list for all the purchases that I made. I'm working on my itemized list, right? Those are small steps. Those are things that I don't like to do. But when I run a business, those are the things that have to be done, right? Because if I'm going to sit up here and tell you about, oh, I'm going to leverage my wealth, or I'm going to try and build wealth, or I'm going to try and create incremental change for myself, or I'm trying to make multi generational change for my legacy, right? I got to learn these things because it's the game that's in front of me. right? How many times can I keep looking at who got it and not go get it, right? How many times can I keep looking at the next person's story and not see that as an opportunity for me to go create my own story? Not as a way to feel discouraged, but as a way to feel inspired, to feel motivated, right? Hold on, here we go. We're gonna have another one. It's coming in. I just seen it pop up. The one and only. Sometimes you have to disconnect yourself from social opinions. What people feel won't necessarily progress what you're going through. Self-evaluation is one of the hardest steps, right? Self-evaluation and self-valuation, right? Evaluating yourself and then valuing yourself, right? Loving yourself. I don't know who's heard it, and if you were blessed and lucky enough to have heard it, but loving yourself is key, right? Evaluating yourself is being honest with yourself. And loving yourself is embracing yourself in that honesty, right? When you evaluate and you value, right, you only have the room to grow. And it's true, right? You have to disconnect yourself from social opinions. Are these people there to help you grow? I actually said in a song, now that I think about it, right? Everybody says that they're
Yeah.
the ish, right? Everybody says that they're the ish. But what type of ish, can I ask? Are you fertilizer here to help us grow? Or that dog ish I accidentally stepped on my soul? I'm conflicted when I'm listening because I really got to know. What you putting on display, half of that you don't own, right? It's the difference, right? It's the same properties, right? Of fecal matter. Is it fertilizer or is this an unfortunate accident of me stepping into something, right? Because when you look at who's around you and who's feeding into you, right, you also got to be mindful of what you're feeding into yourself, because then that's going to repeat on what you feed others, right? If I'm loving me, it's easy for me to love you. But if I'm not loving me, if I'm disrespectful to me, if I'm not valuing me, how can I really value you, right? How can I build community that is purposeful and sustainable if what I'm saying is harmful and hurtful, right? When I'm
Right.
destroying something, I'm not building something. If I'm cutting the tree down, the tree's not going to grow, right? If I'm watering it, if I'm trying to grant it access, if I'm clearing out the debris, I'm taking care of it, right? And that's how I got to treat myself so I can do that for the tree, because I can't get up if my back ain't straight, right? If my legs ain't working, if I'm not taking that time out to do the maintenance for me. And I think that, yeah, that all connects into what we're saying, right? When it says, you know, you want to level up, are you valuing the small steps and progress that you've made, right? Words are so powerful. They're the connection. They're literally what we're doing right now. This is a podcast. We're speaking, right? We're speaking and manifesting. It's affirmations, it's blessings, it's prayer, it's all these different things, right? It's setting forth what the tonality is and what we're trying to accomplish, right? This is a safe space. We're here to talk about healing, but we're going to do it in our way, right? And
Right.
it's true. You have to know the boundaries that you need to create to disconnect from social opinions that can be harmful, right? They can be discouraging, that aren't fruitful or not nourishing, right? To have those intentional set points of like, no, I'm not dealing with this, right? Because yes, self evaluation is very hard, right? But that's okay, because having giving life is hard, right? So many things are difficult. To raise a child is hard, right? To have to plant a seed, water it, and watch it grow slowly over time, that can be very difficult, right? It's easy to just set that thing on fire and have it, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes we have to be fertilizers for the future. It's very true, right? The best two times to plant a tree, 20 years ago and right now, right? But what you put onto it, how you help others grow, how you help your community. Is your community helping you? Identifying those things, knowing your boundaries, knowing your limits, growing and expanding within that. But being mindful of if it's sustainable for you and who you are, that evaluation, the value of it, looking at within, loving what you see, working on it, embracing it even more. It's the development of a relationship, the most foundational and most important and central one, the one within yourself. I wear my heart on my head. I guess I'm hard headed. Just to think this all came from a spark plug.
Mhm. Of course. Right on, Diz. W, good to see you, man. Good to hear from you. Thanks for commenting.
For real, for real.
We
It's
we
appreciated.
we 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 go way back. We go way back. Another 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 athletic person who had a good head on his shoulders, and found his way. It's always good, like to see folks over the decades, and that just that we still alive is a big thing where we come from.
A big blessing.
Um, and so I think for myself, going into this, last month of the year, I'm actually going to. Is this the first? No, it's not the first. I thought it would be the first. I was thinking it was the first funeral of the year, but it's not. I got a funeral coming up. Um, it's the up and down, right, of the mountain
Yep.
range.
Ebb and flow.
And still going up. Um, was opportunity to empathize and support my family, and also just reflect on what you can't take with you, and in that, you know making time to let go of things, to release, so that you can receive. Um, I know that in my life, everything I learn is meant for me to share. Everything I go through and experience is meant for me to pass on in some form, some way. So I try to be present so that I can see and be aware of the things that I've experienced that are relevant to the moment, to the current moment. And as folks are yeah, all the way back to GRD,
Oh man.
you know, um, yeah, exactly. Acceptance of self, the meaning of self awareness, just telling it, and that's it. Self actualization is like where you can, say this is who I am, but also then who I choose to be, who I want to be. And having that intentionality to say this is how I want to show up in the world, fully aware of what could cause harm, and what doesn't cause harm, and even the things that do cause harm. You can set boundaries around who experiences those things, because you know some people will be offended, right? Some people won't like the way you make decisions, and some people won't like the way you show up. Doesn't mean that you're wrong, doesn't mean that they're right. um, does mean it may mean that the way that you show up is not for them, and then that there needs to be a boundary about when and how you interact with them. But in the storytelling, in the self-awareness, self-actualization journey, your own RPG, as you tell your story, you know make decisions that help you level up. And they don't always have to be a grind. Sometimes resting in the hot springs is the right way to level up.
That's true. That's true. That's true. Episode 78 of the Lyrical
Woo!
Ones podcast.
7, 8.
Fluent. Any parting words as we get ready to close out our 78th episode?
Uh, I think 1978 was a year with great music. Um, it's kind of really beginning some of the 80s sounds. And, folks who are 78, are turning, 43 this year. So shout out to them. And the songs that are 43 years old. Um, I think I'm going to take 78 and play some music going into the weekend from 1978, vintage year. And for me, I always think about how I can time travel. And so
For
add it,
real.
add in soundtracks, add in smells, add in smiles, add in memories, to moments, allow me to revisit them. And I think having the soundtrack for your life, allows you to visit different time spaces. And if you don't got a song on the speaker, try to have one in your heart. That's what I want to say. If you don't got a sound on the speaker, have a sound in your heart.
Well, episode 78, broken glass theory. Broken glass everywhere. Yeah.
One, 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 one.